is equivalent to urinary concentration multiplied by the volume of urine produced per unit time. That is the Ux and if it is divided by the plasma volume, plasma concentration, renal arterial plasma or the venous plasma, when it is not different from that of the arterial plasma, you can replace the arterial plasma concentration of the systemic venous concentration, and it is the clearance of X. It is the clearance of X, renal clearance. Renal clearance. So definition of renal clearance, that is the volume of plasma that is cleared of any of its constituent through urine in a unit time. Clearance. And what is the amount per unit time that is present is equivalent to that is filtered. Some substances are fully filtered and some substances are partially filtered, and in that case condition, then you consider there is the filterable fraction. Here, sodium and chloride ion, if you consider, they are fully filtered. Fully filtered meaning is that their concentration in the plasma is equivalent to that is present in the fluid in the Bowman's capsule, fully filtered. Yeah. But some substances are partially filtered. As for example, there is calcium and magnesium. In case of calcium, roughly 50% is filterable, and the remaining 50% is protein bound with albumin or other proteins, and some part are filterable. It may be ionic compound, inorganic compound, or it may be part of the organic compound. Phosphate bicarbonate also in this. And in that case, you have to consider that is the filterable part. So, per unit time, you will get this. Into plasma concentration plus minus Tx, that is the transfer per unit time. It is the very initial part of understanding of the tubular function. Whatever present in the urine in unit time is equal to GFR multiplied by the plasma concentration of that substance. That is the filterable part. Most compounds are fully filtered, like glucose, amino acids, they are fully filtered because they are not protein bound also. Yeah. But there are few substances that are incompletely filtered. Then you have to consider what is the filterable part only. Yeah. So in general, this formula plus minus Tx, because the renal tubule, they are the sites of reabsorption and also to some extent secretion also. There are some substances, there is net secretion, and there are some substances that is a net reabsorption. In some cases, both taking place. But in most cases, you will find there is either secretion or reabsorption. And if you divide by, if this value is divided by plasma concentration, better arterial plasma or peripheral venous plasma you can consider in most cases. Then it becomes equal to GFR plus minus Tx by Tx. And whenever there is no transfer per unit time, that is filtered and that is untouched. So that amount has been filtered only, and that is not either reabsorbed nor secreted. And when you make its clearance, then it becomes equal to that of the GFR Cx, clearance of X. Whenever this part is 0, then there is, then this clearance of X becomes equal to glomerular filtration rate. Typical example is inulin clearance. Inulin clearance. Clearance of inulin is equivalent to that of the GFR. It is a gold standard. Clearance of inulin. Inulin is a polysaccharide of molecular weight 5200. It is a polymer of fructose found in Dahlia tubers, and it is freely filtered, neither secreted nor reabsorbed, and its clearance is the gold standard. But it requires intravenous infusion. Initially, a loading dose is given and then a maintenance dose, and it cannot enter into the cell. It remains circulated within the extracellular fluid, and whenever there is equilibrium is established, then a sample of urine is collected and time is noted. So from this you can get the Ux value, and in between time you take a venous sample, peripheral venous sample, because it is not utilized by the body. Its concentration is same everywhere in the arterial plasma or venous plasma. And if then you use this formula, you get this glomerular filtration. So technically it is difficult, but creatinine clearance is relatively easy. Creatinine clearance. Creatinine is anhydride of creatine, and it is produced depending upon the muscle mass. It is produced, and it is freely filtered, creatinine, but it is to some extent it is reabsorbed, and to some extent it is secreted, but there is small amount of secretion, so its clearance is more than GFR. Whenever there is secretion, then it is a positive value we consider, so its clearance is more than GFR. But in reality, whenever measurement is done, plasma creatinine concentration, it is to some extent overestimated. By the methods available to measure creatinine, it is to some extent overestimated. So there is an effect of nullification. So its clearance is almost equal to that of the clearance of inulin. বোঝা গেছে জিনিসটা খুবই সহজ জিনিস। ক্রিয়াটিন ইজ এন্ডোজেনাস সাবস্টেন্স, creatine phosphate present in the muscle. Methyl guanidoacetic acid. It is the creatine. And it is anhydrous creatinine. And it is fully filtered. To some extent reabsorbed and secreted also. But there is small amount of net secretion. So its clearance should be theoretically more than that of GFR or clearance of inulin. But its concentration in the urine is sufficient. But in the plasma, the concentration is low and its measurement to some extent is defective. It is overestimated. So that the ratio becomes almost equal to that of the GFR. Clear? Suppose in that case, TCR divided by PCR. It is to some extent overestimated. So this ratio is almost equal to that of the clearance of inulin. Though it is not in that sense accurate, it is sufficiently accurate for clinical purposes. And if necessity arises, then creatinine clearance is done. Besides that, if you go to textbook of medicine, in other ways are there. Some radioactive elements are also used. Or in individuals where collection of urine is disease condition difficult, then there are some other methods by blood sample collection repeatedly, and there are some methods by means of which in that particular individual GFR can be measured. But physiology text, we should not go deep into this part. When you have sufficient knowledge of the basic sciences, you can easily go into the details that is given in medicine texts. Now this tubular function, in this case of it is the GFR can be measured in this way. Renal plasma flow can be measured by the concept of clearance. And which substance is used for measuring renal plasma flow? Renal blood flow measure করবার জন্য কোন পদার্থ ব্যবহার করা হয়? তোমাদের মধ্যে এই বৃহৎ জনগণের মধ্যে কেউ বলতে পারছে না? কেউ বলতে পারছে না? কেউ এটা কেউ বলতে পারছো না তোমরা? রেনাল ব্লাড ফ্লো বার করবার জন্য কোন পদার্থের ব্যবহার হয়, কোন দ্রব্যের ব্যবহার হয়? এটা বলতে পারছো না তোমরা? বই থেকে এটা দেখে নেবে, বুঝতে পেরেছো? এটা হচ্ছে প্যারা অ্যামিনো হিপুরিক অ্যাসিড। প্যারা অ্যামিনো হিপুরিক অ্যাসিড। Para-aminohippuric acid. Hippuric acid is a benzoyl glycine. Benzoic acid moiety is attached by a chemical bond with that of the glycine. And in the para position of this benzene ring, there is a amino group, para-aminohippuric acid. Normally, hippuric acid is present in the urine because some food products containing this benzoic acid as the preservative. It is not directly there from the natural food, but the preserved food may contain benzoic acid, and then hippuric acid is present in the urine. It is a mode of elimination of the toxic product in the urine. But para-aminohippuric acid is used for the measurement of the renal blood flow, rather renal plasma flow. Para-amino hepatic acid is also freely filtered and it is extensively secreted. So its concentration in the, when its concentration in the plasma is low, then within a single circulation it becomes eliminated. Suppose para-amino hepatic acid is extensively secreted. It is also extensively secreted, so that all is eliminated. And within the peripheral capillaries, in the proximal tubule, it is almost all eliminated. So its clearance represents that of the renal plasma flow. And in that case, the fixed principle that can be applied, renal plasma concentration is not taken because it is taken as 0. Only peripheral venous plasma is sufficient. So UPH into V divided by plasma pH, it is the clearance of pH and it is the effective renal plasma flow. And it was discussed the other day. You have not taken time to recapitulate it. বুঝা গেছে? এবং এটা স্বীকার্য যে ফিজিওলজি অত্যন্ত একটা সহজ সাবজেক্ট এবং খুব দ্রুত খুব সহজেই আয়ত্ত করতে পারে মানুষ, বুঝতে পেরেছ? সেই জন্য এইটা না জানার মধ্যে কোনো অগৌরব নেই, বুঝলে? অগৌরব কোথায় আসবে? তুমি একটা ভালো অ্যালকোহলের ব্র্যান্ডের নাম বলতে পারছো না, তাহলে সমাজে তোমাকে বলবে যে লোকটা এই যুগের অচল। কিন্তু প্যারাঅ্যামিনো হেপারিক অ্যাসিড নাম না বলতে পারলে কোনো লজ্জার কিছু নেই, কারণ সেটা বইয়ে লেখা আছে, অত্যন্ত সহজ জিনিস, বুঝতে পেরেছ? তোমাকে যদি কেউ জিজ্ঞাসা করে যে এরকম একটা ভালো ব্র্যান্ডের অ্যালকোহলের নাম কি, তুমি যদি সেটা না জানো তাহলে বলবে যে এই যুগে অচল, বুঝতে পেরেছ? এই যুগে এইসব লোক চলে না। হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু তুমি যদি বলে প্যারাঅ্যামিনো হেপারিক অ্যাসিডের নামও না করতে পারো, তাহলে সেখানে লজ্জার কিছু নেই। যুগের সঙ্গে সঙ্গে সবই বিবর্তন হচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু তোমার পরীক্ষার জন্য একটু একটু দরকার আছে, তোমার জ্ঞানের জন্য একটু একটু দরকার আছে। কাজেই ক্লিয়ারেন্স অফ পিএইচ, renal plasma, but when it is divided by the extraction ratio, normally 90% is extracted, only 10% remains in the, only 10% remains. Extraction ratio. So the extraction ratio, if you divide this value by the extraction ratio, and then you get the renal plasma flow, and by the knowledge of the hematocrit, you can find out the renal blood flow. Now you can consider the tubular function of handling with glucose. It is important and given in the examination. And here lies the concept of TM, tubular maximum. Tubular maximum. Because the tubules have the capacity, whenever there is the case of carrier mediated diffusion, especially active transport, then there is the maximum limit, beyond which it is not possible per unit time to either reabsorb or secrete any substance. It is called Tm, tubular maximum. Typical example is glucose and also this para-aminohippuric acid. And glucose is important. It is asked in the examination. In the supplementary examination, splay phenomenon was given. And their answer were very good. Their answer was very good, and they got sufficient marks from my fingers. Because they received some help from some unknown source. So that in some cases, they were very good. There is no spelling mistake, there is no grammatical mistake, and clear conception in one question. And where there is some help is not available, and then there are some gobbles. But in spite of that, overall their performance was very good. But this play phenomenon, they somehow derived something related to electrophysiology that is not asked for. And for this reason, it is not possible for me to give marks to them. বুঝতে পেরেছি? যেমন একই টার্ম তোমার ফিজিক্সেও ব্যবহার হতে পারে, আবার ফিজিওলজিতেও ব্যবহার হতে পারে। তুমি যদি ফিজিক্সের জিনিসটা সঠিকভাবেও লিখে যাও, তাহলে এইখানে তুমি নম্বর পাবে না। আমি রিমার্ক করতে বাধ্য হলাম যে এটা চাওয়া হয়নি। প্লে যখন চাওয়া হয়েছে, এখানে আমাদের ফিজিওলজি সেন্সে রেনাল ফাংশন হিসেবেই চাওয়া হয়েছে। কাজেই উই ক্যান ডিসকাস উইথ গ্লুকোজ. গ্লুকোজ ইজ ফ্রিলি ফিল্টার্ড. Normally, in the urine there is no glucose. You all know the plasma glucose concentration. For a typical value, you take in the textbook, there is it varies. It will be 90, 20 or so, 31. In the fasting condition, it is less than 140 or so. You have learned in detail in biochemistry or in physiology text. I am not going into that. Suppose in a normal individual has a plasma glucose concentration of 80 milligram per deciliter or 100 ml, and GFR is equal to 125 ml. Filtrate load is equal to GFR into plasma glucose. You can consider it better, it is renal arterial plasma glucose, because glucose is utilized by the cells. So in the peripheral venous plasma, it is to some extent low, but you think that they are used interchangeably. যে কোনো একটা ধরলেও তোমার কাজ চলে যাবে। Now, if you multiply this 125 ml per minute into ml, 100 milligram তাই তো হওয়া উচিত। এটা দেখলে the filtered load. In all compounds, it is calculated in this way. What is the filtered load of sodium in different units? Then you consider the plasma glucose, into GFR. Per day, what is the filtered load of sodium? Then it will become equal to 140 milliequivalent per liter into 180 liter per day. So this is the filtered load, and this load is handled by the millions of tubules. Millions of tubules, and in this way they are reabsorbed. And you can get whatever amount of the urine. And if subtract, then you get what is the amount of reabsorption. That is the transfer. In this case, it is in this case. And whenever there is a limit beyond which tubules cannot reabsorb glucose, that is called TMG, or transport maximum of glucose. If you draw this titration curve given in the textbook, arterial plasma glucose concentration, and it is, if you consider, it is the and in this curve you can take whatever amount that is filtered load, and it is dependent upon if GFR remains constant. Plasma glucose will vary, and so it will be a straight line going through the origin, filtered load. Suppose it is the filtered load. It is the filtered load. With the slope is GFR. And reabsorption will follow it. And it is the and up to this point it is completely reabsorbed. Milligram per minute. $375 in case of male, and in case of female, so in case of male, if you consider this is the filtered load up to which it is possible to reabsorb all of them. Then it is the transport maximum, and it has a corresponding value of plasma concentration. Yeah. So if you divide by 125 ml ঠিক আছে, বুঝতে পারছি? প্রতি মিনিটে 375 মিলিগ্রাম সেটা তোমার হয়ে যাচ্ছে, রিঅ্যাবজর্পশন হচ্ছে, টিজি, TMG যখন ম্যাক্সিমাম, and if it is divided by the GFR, this value, so it will eliminate, and ultimately it will be 3 milligram, that is equal to 300 milligram per liter or 100. So this value upon this, it is 300. Plasma concentration of arterial plasma. renal arterial plasma or cerebral arterial plasma. Milligram per deciliter. And when you consider that is coming through the urine, then you consider theoretically up to this there is no elimination in the urine, theoretical threshold, and in that case then it is the urine. And it should be the ideal curve in this case. So from this formula, if you consider the clearance of glucose, this is formula because glucose is reabsorbed. So its clearance is less than GFR. Reabsorbed. And normally the clearance of glucose is 0. Normally, but when it exceeds this value, then it go on increasing. And this formula is also applicable whenever this pH is minus this plasma glucose theoretical threshold or more, and TMG. Equal or greater than that of theoretical threshold. So whenever it is going on, then TMG becomes constant, but this denominator will go on increasing. So initially its clearance is 0, but it will approach gradually to that of the GFR. Because TMG this is increasing. So this part will becoming reduced. Normally there is no transport, all is reabsorbed. That is in that case the clearance of glucose is 0. But whenever it exceeds this value, then it is coming into the urine, and this TMG normally it is reabsorbed, but when it becomes constant and plasma glucose concentration go on increasing, so that ultimately it is reduced, it is go on increasing. Clearance will approach that of the GFR value. Now this glucose is reabsorbed by active transport, secondary active transport, like that is present in the GI tract. Within the GI tract, there is a limit beyond which the glucose is not, whether it is present in the intestine, there is a maximum limit beyond which it is not. There is a given value when you go to the GI system, there is the carbohydrate reabsorption, you will find. Glucose is a secondary active transport. It is absorbed in the GI tract along with sodium ion, salt glucose transporter, SGLT2, that is placed at the luminal border. or brush border. And in the basolateral border, there are sodium potassium ATPase, which is always pumping sodium from the cell into the lateral intercellular space. So the sodium concentration within the cell is always low. So there is a tendency of sodium to move from the lumen into it. And there is a transporter called SGLT, by means of which it enters along with sodium. And there is polarity. At the basolateral membrane, there is GLUT2 type of channels, GLUT2. You are familiar with? And through this glucose goes out. Energy is consumed in the form of ATP breakdown with the help of sodium potassium ATPase, the ubiquitous pump that is present in almost all the cells. All this. All this. All this. All the cells. Clear? All the cells. And it is a good example of secondary active transport. And there is a term SGLT1 also, and GLUT1, and different text, current text, you will find more information in this case. The basic thing is that it is in this way it is reabsorbed. And 10% is reabsorbed. 10% is reabsorbed. Whatever is present within this urine, there is a all transfer. GFR into Px minus Tx, it becomes 0 because there is no change. Normally, when it is below the threshold level, then Ux into V is equal to GFR into Px minus Tx. Tx is equivalent to this value, so that it is 0. So clearance is 0. You can apply this concept in this. You will multiply it by this, then GFR into Pg minus Tg is the Tg is equal to this value, it becomes 0 normal. It becomes 0 normal. 0 normal. But it go on increasing. Whenever it reaches the threshold value and even more, and then there will be more and more present in the urine and clearance will rise. And theoretically it should touch, but that does not touch. And it is called asymptotical. Asymptotical. Yeah. Now it has been seen that D-glucose is much more quickly reabsorbed than that of L-glucose. D-glucose, DL form, you have learned in the biochemistry department. D-glucose is easily reabsorbed. Absorption in the intestine, it is called the term absorption. And when it is absorbed in the renal tubules, it is called reabsorption. So reabsorption is used in the renal physiology. Absorption in the GI tract of any component. Now D-glucose is much more rapidly, and plant glucoside florigine, and it inhibits this glucose transport mechanism by acting or competing with glucose for SGLT. Plant glucoside florigine, PHLORIZIN florigine. It is a plant glucoside and it inhibits glucose reabsorption. Yeah. Now, what is this phenomenon? And it is seen that before attaining this theoretical value, there is present in the urine, and it corresponds to a value, suppose 200 milligram. Along with increase in the plasma glucose arterial plasma level, there is undergoing more reabsorption and corresponding and and so it is the actual threshold. It is the actual threshold of 200 milligram per deciliter of arterial plasma, and that corresponds to 180 milligram. That is usually collected. So it is the clinical value. Clinical value. Clinical value. Clinical value. Theoretical threshold is that if all the tubules were of same function and it has the shared TMG, and if it is rigidly followed that rule, when its quota is below that TMG, it will reabsorb. But it is not so. There is variability in their function. In some cases, it has the more capacity of some tubules, and some tubules has the less capacity, so that there is some leaking is coming. And all the reactions that is occurring are to some extent reversible. So that when you exceed this value of 200 milligram, then there is increasing reabsorption. But to some extent elimination is going on. When the affinity of the receptor and it is efficient, very much efficient, then this play may not be efficient. Play may not be evident in some cases. But it is present in the glucose, in the case of is the glucose titration curve. It is asked in the examination. In most cases, the students done this theoretical part, but not this part, this play part. So 10% marks cannot be allotted to them. And their answering pattern is very good. Even if it is supplementary examination, they are very good students. It is apparent from their answers. And I consider them that they have learned this thing and then projected in the paper. But in most cases, they given this initial figure and not this play in this way. Few have given and they got almost 10% marks in this case. This play phenomenon. It is due to heterogeneity of the nephron function. Millions of nephrons. Number of nephrons per kidney, কারণ স্মরণে আছে? 1 million পাওয়া গেছে উত্তর মিলিয়ন। তার মানে তোমাকে এই যে টিএমজিটাকে ভাগ করতে হবে, 2 মিলিয়ন দিয়ে ভাগ করতে হবে, করলে পরে পার নেফ্রনের কোটা পাওয়া যাবে। প্রত্যেকে যদি নিজের কোটার জন্য থাকে যে এর মধ্যে যেটা আসবে আমি সেটা রিঅ্যাবজর্ব করব, তাহলে তো প্রবলেম আসে না। তাহলে পরে একদম তোমার এই টাইপের একদম টিপিক্যাল এই থিওরিটিক্যাল ফিগারটা পাওয়া যায়। So it is this play phenomenon, and it is theoretical threshold is 200. It is the theoretical threshold. It is the actual threshold in arterial plasma is 200 milligram per deciliter, and it corresponds to value of 180 milligram per deciliter in the peripheral venous plasma. and you know very well that sample is collected from the clinical value, and the textbook mention this value. It is the actual, it is not theoretical, actual renal threshold. In case of PAH, if you consider the PAH curve, plasma pH, it is equal in arterial or venous plasma because para-aminohippuric acid is not used by the cells. Concentration is same everywhere in blood vessels. And it is the transport pH, pH. So, value is low. 10 milligram per deciliter or so. When below this value, then it is more than that is filtered. And its clearance of pH